Hi everyone. We will be starting the webinar in a while. Just waiting for the other participants to join. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mita, and welcome to our Skill Migration webinar, Move to Australia as an IT Professional. First and foremost, I would like to thank everyone for attending our seminar this evening. The speaker for today would be our Australian skill migration expert, Audrey Anthony.
Hi, everyone.
All right. What we will be discussing today is how can you migrate to Australia, especially as an IT professional? If you don't know, the skill migration quota for Australia has increased significantly for this new fiscal year to occupy the lack of skilled professionals in Australia. That being said, Australia is looking for IT professionals, and the best part is you don't have to have a degree in IT or any degree at all. What do we need is just a relatable work experience in the IT field. You will learn more on this later. Next, let me introduce about our company and advisors. Firstly, Desmond Ang, our founder and managing director of Global Migration Solutions. He is a chartered accountant and also a licensed migration advisor for almost 19 years. Followed by James Allen Hall, our partner, who is based in Singapore and has for almost 20 years of experience. And we have Audrey, our associate director, and who will be conducting the webinar for tonight. She has been in the migration field for almost 13 years. A little bit about us. We carry ourselves as a premier firm that advocates the right migration practices with trust, service, and commitment for our clients, our partners, ourselves, and our brand. We are different from other firms mainly because we do not have a sales team in our company, as we do not encourage a client to be advised by a salesperson. Rather, your assessment will only be undertaken by the consultants themselves. GMS has been in the radar for 19 years with a 99% success record and has helped more than 12,000 of families to migrate successfully to Australia. And this number continues to grow today. Also, we are the only migration company in Malaysia to receive the top 25 Global Migration Agency CEO Award by UGlobal. We have been progressing from being the top 100 in 2018 to being the top 25 in 2022. This is definitely not possible without the support from our partners, state governments, and clients. We are also licensed with the Australian government to provide immigration advice. As you can see, these are the license for Desmond Ang and James as registered migration agents by the Australian government, Department of Home Affairs. You would be able to look up at these details at the immigration website. It is always important that you are dealing with a registered migration officer holding the current license because they would need to complete a yearly CPD to maintain their knowledge in the industry. Here is our presence. Global Migration Solutions has widened its horizons to countries such as Australia, Singapore, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Hong Kong. These are the services we carry. We are the pioneers for Australia and New Zealand. We also do investment programs for the European Residency Program, which is through Portugal, and for the United States through the EB5 program. So that's a little bit about our background. We can now begin the session, and I would like to welcome Audrey to take over.
Thank you, Ashmita. Hi, everyone. A very good evening to all of you. I see a large number of participants today, and we are very excited to share about how to migrate to Australia as an IT professionals. I think generally all around the world, there are a lot of IT professionals, hence the very popular demand for this migration session. So before I get into the technicalities of how do you migrate as an IT professional, I would share a little bit about Australia itself. So Australia has been a very, very popular migration destination, especially among Asians. And so why is Australia so popular? There are also a lot of other countries that are equally good in terms of their migration programs, such as Canada. But the feedback that we always get from clients is, oh, Canada is too cold and too far. Okay, so Australia somehow it's right in a good positioning in terms of it's not too far from all the Asian countries, and it's been always a very migrant-friendly country. Now, let's talk about the benefits that you get as an Australian PR. So this is also the reason why Australia migration is actually very popular, okay? First and foremost, I think a good way to look at it is being an Australian PR is almost as good as a citizen. Okay, that's the first thing. So hence, these benefits that you see on the screen is what comes to you once you're a PR. So as an Australian PR, number one, you have access to Australian healthcare system, which is Medicare, meaning that you would be able to get you'll be able to get services at the government hospital for free and subsidized subsidized health services as well. Number two, you'll be able to live and work in Australia indefinitely. Okay, I think that's what's really important, because I have many clients, or even you might have actually applied for a job in Australia, right? So when you actually apply for a job in Australia right now, what is the response that you get? It is usually very common to get the response that, do you have work rights? That's the first thing that comes in the email. So how do you address this? It's by basically getting an Australian PR before you move to Australia. And that's how it's possible with general skill migration. And as an Australian PR, you also are entitled to family tax relief benefits. Most importantly, a lot of clients actually migrate to Australia because of their children being the priority. Why? Because education in Australia is top-notch, right? So as an Australian PR, you would be able to enjoy free tuition fees in primary and secondary school, okay? And in terms of tertiary, you get subsidized fees. So if you're looking at places like University of Melbourne, RMIT, Curtin, all these are top universities in Australia. And if you're actually holding an Australian PR, you basically would only be paying 30% of what an international student would be paying, okay? So hence, I think 80% of our clients are usually parents who are planning ahead for their children's education. There's also great welfare benefits in Australia. I think one of the best times to see this for real is actually during the COVID pandemic. So during COVID pandemic, the government was actually handing out monetary assistance of about 700 Aussie every fortnight for people not to go out, okay? For people to basically stay home and keep keep themselves and keep everyone else safe by not exposing themselves to the virus. So that is something I think Australia has always been known for their very good welfare system. And most importantly, as a PR, you also get a Australian citizenship. You will be able to have a pathway towards Australian citizenship after 4 years. You also will be entitled to first home buyer grant. So first home buyer grant is usually state specific. So as a PR, for any property that is usually that there's a certain price, it's about 700,000 if I'm not mistaken. Right now it's standing at 700,000. You would be getting some sort of allowance like 8,000 Aussie from the Australian government to help you buy your first home. Next, as a PR, you can sponsor family members, you can sponsor your parents under the parent visa, you can sponsor your spouse and a child. And again, to sum it up, being Australian PR is almost as good as a citizen. So all these are actually very, very attractive, and hence why it actually adds on to why Australia is a popular migration destination. So here, Asmita earlier shared with you that there's been a significant demand in the migration program. So you would be able to see this for yourself here. If you're able to look at the planning levels for 2023-2024. So right now, the new fiscal year just started on 1st of July, 2023. So we are now on the 3rd week, and these quotas that you see here are allocated till 30th June, 2024. And the good news is these quotas have not been used up yet, okay? Because the year just started, the states are still right now planning on how they should utilize this, all right? So if you're looking at general skill migration, the quotas is 30,000 over. Look at what you see for regional visas, state territory visas is about all 30,000 plus. And this basically sums up that out of 190,000 quotas that are available for the entire migration program, 72% is allocated for skill migration. Okay, so why is there a sudden surge? Okay, the sudden surge took place since last year, and this happened basically after COVID, because during COVID, a lot of people had to leave Australia when the borders were closing. That's number one. And number two, now that the pandemic is almost an endemic, right? It's time to recover, to restart the economy. Hence, Australia has publicly declared that they lack 500,000 skilled workers, and they're very much open to migrants coming to fill up this space. So it's a good time, everyone. So let's go through the following slides to see how you will be able to qualify. During the registration, we also noticed that there were a lot of applicants from various backgrounds and age. So I decided to just run through this very quickly. The focus today would be on general skill migration, okay, which is generally for somebody who's below the age of 45, okay? But a little bit about the other programs that are still suitable for migration. Number two is actually Global Talent Independent. So Global Talent Independent is a program for those who are able to demonstrate that they are exceptional and able to contribute significantly to Australia in certain target sectors. So there's about 10 target sectors available. And this is for somebody who, for example, who has come up with innovations, something that's novel, who got awards, okay? So it's quite a high level criteria that needs to be met, but feel free to send your CV if you think you meet this, because this is for those above 45 years of age, okay? And actually there's no age limit. Employer-sponsored visa are basically when you already have an employer in Australia willing to offer you a job, and at the same time process your visa as well under the company. So this is actually called employer-sponsored visa. Commonly, the terms that are currently being used is called TSS 482, which is temporary skill shortage, okay, which is a work visa. Number four, family sponsor. So family sponsor in Australia is mainly for parents, spouse, and child. So there is no sibling sponsorship, like how the US has under the Australian visa system, okay? If at all there's actually a sibling sponsorship, or sometimes you might have heard, oh, my uncle actually sponsored me, my aunt sponsored me, or my cousin sponsored me. It doesn't come under family sponsor, it actually comes under number 1, which is general skill migration, because general skill migration has a visa that actually has further points if supported by a sibling or a cousin or an uncle, okay? Number 5, the most interesting program, or rather used to be, because the quota for this right now has been really cut down, but very, very popular during COVID, is business innovation and investor stream. So again, this visa is for those above 45. Those above 45 can still apply for this. You either would need to be a business owner to qualify for the business migration, or invest a minimum sum of 2.5 million Aussie or 5 million Aussie. Okay, so these are the various pathways that are available. So if you don't fit into number 1, feel free to talk to us about the other pathways available. All right. So let's focus on the main thing today, which is general skill migration. Let's look at the basic criteria to qualify for a general skill migration. So number 1, age. You need to be below the age of 45 years old. There's also a point test, okay? This point test, you need to get a minimum score of 65. So how do you get 65 points? This is actually contributed by different sort of factors on the point test. So you basically get points for age, okay? So when you're too young, you don't get much points. So the best part, the best time to get the highest points actually when you're 25 to 32, okay? Then you get points for education, you get points for the years of work experience that you have, you get points for the level of your English, you get points for studying in Australia, or if you have a relative in Australia. So these are the various factors, okay? So it's very, very important to know and understand if 65 is sufficient for you or not, okay? So because meeting 65 is just the basic, but does the basic get you an invitation? That's what you really need to know through the consultation when you come to us. Number 3, occupation needs to be on the list. So later I'll be sharing with you of course, the IT occupations, but just to let you know, there's actually 500 over occupations on the migration list, okay? I know commonly people think, oh, okay, Australia needs nurses, Australia needs doctors, Australia needs engineers, Australia needs IT guys, right? Yes, definitely. But does these 4 categories make up 500? No, right? There's a lot of other general occupations that are available, such as marketing, graphic designer, HR, just a lot, okay? You can actually Google to find these 500 occupations. Number 4, which is everyone's fear factor, okay? Which is English. So you will need to have a minimum English at a competent level. But this is the minimum requirement. So you actually need to take an English test, okay? So the English tests that are commonly taken are usually IELTS and the PTE English test, all right? But compared to this IELTS and PTE, I always tell my clients to go for the Pearson's test of English, which is PTE, because my clients do tend to score much better in it. So if you're able to score 65 in each component of the PTE, for example, you would come to the band of a proficient score that lifts up your points on the point test. And if you're able to get 79 points in PTE, that actually brings up your points another 10 points higher to 20 points, again, boosting your points. So these days, competition is high. Everyone is aiming for superior score. So please choose the right English test that suits you and prepare accordingly, okay? Number 5, last but not least, after meeting all these conditions, there's another step, which is receiving an invitation, okay? So you must be invited to submit a visa, okay? So the invitation can come by automatically through the system, or through a state or through a relative. Okay, so that's the basic requirements. Now, here's the spotlight. So what you saw earlier was generally to qualify for a general skill migration to Australia. Now, these are the specific criteria that I've outlined for just especially for today's session, so that you are clear whether you make the cut to migrate as a ICT professional. So if you take a look at the first row, you'll be able to see that there's qualification from bachelor degree, and the last row says no qualifications. So that's what we mean. So in summary, if you don't have qualifications, you basically need to compensate with additional work experience and other factors. So let's go one by one. Okay, bachelor's degree. So if you actually have a bachelor's degree, so let's say you have a bachelor's degree in software engineering, okay, and then you work as a software engineer as well. So this is basically where your IT is a major. You have a bachelor's degree in a major in IT, and closely relevant to your nominated occupation, which is software engineer. In these sort of cases, usually 2 years of work experience would suffice. Okay. There are also cases where you might have an IT degree, like a software engineering degree, but what you're doing is not programming or software engineering. So let's say you are working as a network specialist. So network specialist is not too much on software engineering, though it's closely related, but it's not directly related. In those sort of situations, you would need 4 years of work experience. So when we say you need the 4 years, you need the 2 years, what does this actually mean? Meaning this is the basic work experience, the minimum work experience that you need to have to qualify to even start to apply. Okay. Then let's look at a bachelor degree with ICT minor. So it's very common. What I've seen with ICT minor is usually our clients from India. So clients from India usually have this degree in electronics, okay, degree in electronics and communication. So most often than not, a degree like this will still have a lot of ICT components in their syllabus, okay? However, it's not major, so it becomes an IT minor, okay? So it's a bachelor degree with an IT minor. In this sort of situations, you would need between 5 years to 6 years of work experience to qualify before you can start the process. Now, without a degree, it's even possible, right? So if you have a diploma, an advanced diploma or an associate degree in a IT major, same thing, 5 years. So let's go to the interesting part when you don't have an IT degree, okay? So a diploma or higher non-IT. So let's say I have a diploma in mass communications. Suddenly I'm so much into IT, right? It is still possible. Basically, you would need 5 to 6 years of experience. On top of that, because you don't have an IT degree, you would need to do something called RPL, which is recognition of prior learning. It's basically a report, okay? In this report, you would need to write 2 project reports about 2 projects that you have done. And the reason is they want you to be able to demonstrate your technical IT knowledge in the project, since you don't actually have a qualification. And then no qualifications can still apply, huh? Okay, so if you have no qualifications, and let's say you've just completed high school, and after you've completed high school, you had a strong passion in IT, you started working since the age of 18, okay, non-stop. Yes, you can still apply. You must have basic 8 years plus the RPL report as well. Okay, so obviously, so whenever IT qualification is absent, the report will need to come into place. All right. So, but let's talk a bit about what happens when you have 8 years as minimum. So the 8 years as minimum is basically just to meet the minimum requirement, meaning if you want to claim work experience points, you will not be able to claim work experience for that 8 years. So let's say you want to claim 5 years of work experience. 5 years gives you 10 points, example. So you would actually need to have 8 years plus 5 years, so 13 years. Okay, so that's the part we will do the assessment for you. I think on your side, just for a quick knowledge, what you need to know is this is the minimum work experience that's required. Okay. Now let's look at the type of IT occupations that's listed on the Australia's skill occupation list. So of course, the most common occupations are all listed here: programmers. Then we have our software engineer, ICT trainer, software tester. So here's the list of IT occupations that's available for migration. So feel free to let us know. You can even drop comments at the box to say that, oh, you're actually in which occupation you fall under. And if you think that you fall under one of these occupations, or you think you don't fall specifically on this occupation, also just let us know. As you can see, the last occupation in yellow, it's called NEC occupation. So what is NEC occupations means not elsewhere classified. That means you are an IT person, but your occupation is not classified in all of this that's been listed. So that's also workable. Okay, so that's the interesting part about migrating. We will be able to tell you where do you fit. I think honestly, like we've done so many IT assessments, and one thing that we realize is you can't run too far away. An IT person literally does everything. It's either you're closer to the support side, or the engineering aspect, or the programming aspect, right? So you can't run too far away. So send us your CV. We'll be happy to assess. So now let's look into the overview of the skill migration process. So we spoke about basic criteria. We spoke about qualifying criteria for IT. Now let's talk about the available visa classes that are available for general skill migration. There are basically 3 visa categories, okay? 3 visa classes, we call it. The first 2, subclass 189 and subclass 190, gives you a direct permanent residency. So PR there means permanent resident, okay? These 2 visas are basically what we call direct PR. So that means when your visa is approved today, you basically have a full PR in Australia without doing anything, which is fantastic, right? So how does Australian PR work? You basically have a visa for 5 years, okay, as an Australian PR. And how do you maintain your Australian PR is basically by living in Australia 2 years cumulatively, okay? Now, what's the difference between skill independent and skill nominated? So skill independent, as the word goes, independent, meaning there is actually no third party being involved in your invitation process. It's a direct invitation from the federal government, from the system. So basically the system is automatically programmed for each round of invitation to select at certain points. So for example, they would set things like, okay, this round I need to select nurses at 65 points, engineers at 80 points, IT at 85 points. So they pre-program the system, and the system would just blindly select profiles with the point. Okay, that's skill independent. Then subclass 190, skill nominated. This is a visa that requires a state nomination. Okay, so when we say state nomination, it doesn't mean the state was going to give you a job, or you need to, get a job in the state. No. State nomination just basically means each state in Australia would actually come out with their demand list of the type of skills that they need in their state. So what we need to do is to see which of the states' demand list has your occupation. Okay, so let's say you're a security specialist, right? So we need to look at, okay, does Melbourne have it? Does Sydney have it? Or does Perth have it? Monitor this, submit the interest, and when the state actually picks you and they nominate you, you get a visa called 190. And because the state has nominated you, you will have a moral commitment to live with the state for the first 2 years. Okay. So these two are PR. Let's move on to subclass 491, which is a TR. Okay, it's actually a temporary residence, but it's actually a temporary residence that eventually converts to a PR. Okay, so I think I'm someone who keeps advocating this visa. Okay, simply because every time when I used to talk to clients about the 491 visa and I say, oh, it's a temporary residence, and the client said, no, I don't want temporary residence, I want PR. Okay, so I just need all of you to understand that as much as this is a TR, this is a TR that can convert to a PR. So this is unlike a student visa, unlike a graduate visa, even unlike employer-sponsored visa, because employer-sponsored visas are usually for 2 years. You might be able to renew it for another 2 years, which is 4 years. And what happens after that, right? After expiry, you need to leave, unless your employer decides to convert you to the PR employer-sponsored visa. So who is the deciding person here? The employer, not you, right? So sometimes I had a client who worked for Shell in Western Australia. He was on the employer-sponsored visa for 4 years. And after 4 years, the company is not sponsoring him to convert to PR, right? So it's very shaky when you have TRs. But this TR is your own, okay? And you would need to basically comply with very, very simple condition in order to change the TR status to become PR. So subclass 491, there are two pathways. One is using a state nomination and the other one is using a family sponsorship. This is the one I mentioned, where you can use your brother or your cousin. Okay, this is when you can use it. So now, this visa is basically a visa that only allows you to live, work, and study in a regional area in Australia. Okay, so what is regional area? It's not kampung. Okay, well, in other words, it's not village. Some clients will say, oh, it's really the village, is it? No, it's not. It's basically local population and growing areas. So regional areas in Australia are basically anywhere except Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne. Just these three top cities that are almost overpopulated, okay, and the infrastructure cannot sustain the population already. So hence, government is also encouraging migrants to come and go to the other areas, like Perth. Perth is fantastic, right? Just 5 hours away from Malaysia. So you have Perth, you have Adelaide, you have Canberra, you have Gold Coast. You can still go to New South Wales in the area of Newcastle, Central Coast, Wollongong. This sort of areas are really good, okay? And it's not as what you think it's like a village. It's not, it's very developed, okay? So this visa only allows you to live, work, study in a regional area. That's number one. And number two, how do you convert? How do you convert that TR status to become PR? It's very, very easy. You would just need to show 3 years of tax statement from the Australian Taxation Office. That's it. So there used to be an income threshold that was spoken about. It is confirmed there is no minimum income threshold. All you need to do is basically produce your 3 years of tax statement. What must you work as? You can work as anything, okay? So even if you're doing IT now, you can go to Australia and continue your IT career if you want to. But there are many people who likes to change their career or want to take a break or want to start doing a business. You can. Under the subclass 491, you can run your own business. You can do any other occupation. I had a client, for example, last time was a marketing person in a big corporate company. And once she went to South Australia, she decided to be a yoga teacher, right? More relaxing, enough of corporate, right? So flexible, right? You can go back to IT if you want to. And if you don't want to, it's fine. It's all about within the 5 years, show 3 years of tax statement. Okay, as long as you're able to demonstrate 3 years of tax statement from the Australian Taxation Office, you would be able to convert that 491 into another visa called 191. Okay, and you get your full PR. So while you're on 491, as much as it's not a PR, you still get two most important benefits of a PR, which is number one, Medicare. So you still have access to healthcare. Free healthcare, Okay, I think that's one of the most important things you need as a migrant. And number two, there's still free tuition fees for primary and secondary school education in Australia. So it's really not that bad. So of course, we'll prioritize direct PR, but 491 is not bad at all. Okay. All right, so this is the flow of the migration process. Okay, so there are 4 bubbles here. All right, the 4 bubbles are the main stages of the application. Of course, the first bubble is which is not here, is basically commencement. Okay, so when you first commence, we'll be collecting documents from you, advising you how to prepare for your English test and stuff like that. Then once you've got your documents complete for Australian Computer Society. So if you're in IT, which I think majority of you today are in IT, your assessment will actually be submitted to Australian Computer Society. Okay, so Australian Computer Society usually takes about 3 months. So the first bubble is about 3 months. And the good news is the English is actually not the first step for you. So for those who think, okay, let me go and prepare my English first, don't. Please speak to us. Let us first check your eligibility, okay? And then we'll plan it for you on when you should take your English, okay? Because English is not your first step. Your skills assessment is the first step, okay? We should plan the time wisely because we don't want to get into the process too late when quotas have already depleted, all right? So submit skill assessment. Skill assessment takes 3 months. While the skill assessment goes on, do your English. Okay, once your English is completed, skill assessment is completed, you'll get a result to say suitable for migration under software engineer or developer programmer. Okay, with that, we will then submit your expression of interest, which is popularly known as EOI. Okay, everybody, EOI. Yeah, EOI actually stands for expression of interest. So expression of interest is basically a profile that contains a listing of your points, okay, of how you got your points. So let's say you qualify. So we can actually submit multiple expression of interest if need be, if you actually qualify for the 3 of the visa classes, 189, 190, 491, right? So that is again something that we would advise you, we would guide you to actually tell you, hey, you know what? 189 is not going to work out for you. All right, so don't waste your time waiting on 189. You should do 190 and 491. Or at the same time, when I actually have a client who has very, very strong points, I would actually tell the client, hey, don't submit for 491 now. As much as I advocate 491, I will also need to see the situation, right? So when the client's points is very, very high, and I know that they're going to make the cut from 189 and 190 very clearly, I would prevent them from submitting 491. Okay, so once we submit the EOI, we basically wait. We basically wait in the pool for the selection. There's no timeline, okay? But right now, with the good momentum, we have seen invitations coming as fast as, what, 1 day? Okay, but 1 day was a miracle. Okay, I'm not going to make that as a benchmark. Generally, 3 months is healthy, okay? 3 to 6 months is even very healthy. So once you get an invitation, so you can either get an invitation, like I said, directly through the system, or through a state nomination, or through a relative sponsorship. Once you're invited, you have 60 days to submit the visa, which is the 3rd bubble. So only if you get an invitation, you would submit a visa. Okay, so until then, you're floating. So once you submitted a visa, after that, you'll need to complete medicals, police check, and then you get the visa decision, which is your visa grant. Okay, so that's the flow. Processing time usually varies between 1.5 years is a good estimation. Okay, 1.5 years is a good estimation, but in some cases, if you're really at the right skill, at the right time and everything, it could even be a year. Okay, so that's overall process. Okay, I've just managed to extract very quickly just now, just before this webinar, I extracted some of the samples of visa invitations we have received for IT occupations. Okay, so generally we know that IT is competitive, but here you'll be able to see that there is an invitation for 190, which is a direct PR by Queensland, which is the last one. Okay, the last one. And what was really, really interesting is the third one. If you're able to see here, ICT system test engineer was invited with a bare minimum of 65 points for a 491 visa. So that was actually, honestly, caught us by surprise, okay? Because IT is generally competitive, but when we saw that, that's when we knew really, wow, Australia really needs people, okay? Australia really needs people, and hence it's really the right time. So if you're interested to try this out, don't delay, okay? Okay, I'm done with my sharing, and I'm just going to pass it back to Mita for her to take over. Thanks, everyone.
Wow, thank you, Audrey. That was a great session, actually. So, what is next for me? I believe you are well updated on the main criteria to migrate to Australia as an IT professional. So, if you're wondering how to check your eligibility and start the process, these are the steps for you. So, step one, send us your CV to assess your eligibility and a free consultation. Or you can even complete our assessment form, which will be in our website. And here, if you scan the QR code, it will directly lead you to our assessment form. All right. So step two, do contact us to fix an appointment for your complimentary appointment. All right. And meet us, you can meet us via Zoom or at our beautiful office for a detailed consultation with Audrey. And step four, kickstart your migration journey without any delay. All right. So, all right. Also, we are active on social media platforms, so providing you regular updates. So you may scan the QR code to follow our social media and stay updated with the latest migration news. So we're active in LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and even Facebook. So, ladies and gentlemen, for those, sorry. Okay, we can proceed with the Q&A session. Okay, Audrey, there's a question. All right. My title is a junior software developer, but my job and responsibility is more towards development operations and automation. So how do I fare?
Okay. So the title honestly is not everything. Okay, so title is not everything. So we would actually need to review the tasks, right? As long as the task is not too much on the lower side, okay, of technician. So because there's always a professional level and technician level. So as long as, even if you're it's junior developer, right?
Yes, she's the title is junior software developer.
Software developer, yeah. So I'm guessing that this person would have been a fresh grad or just starting off in the career. So usually it works, right? It usually would work. So we would need to see the type of duties that the person does. And then from there, we'll be able to sum up to see if this would be suitable to have 2 years of experience, which is the minimum, or 4 years of experience. So title is not everything. So please send us a CV.
All right, let's proceed to the next question. For subclass 491, after converting to PR, do I still need to comply with the second point?
Second point, sorry.
I think it's from the slides.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see. Okay, I think I know what's my second point to live. No, second point is, I remember it was live and work in a regional area, right? So no, so that's the thing, right? Once you've converted from a subclass 491 and you become a full PR, which is subclass 191, you can live anywhere in Australia. Okay, so basically, as long as you hold a PR title in Australia, you can live, work, study anywhere in Australia. So it's only during the part when you're holding 491, you would be restricted to the regional areas.
All right. Okay. There's a nice question here. Okay. Does a recruiter in tech be qualified? They are recruiting for software engineering roles.
Absolutely. So basically, I guess this person is, recruiting IT professionals for their clients, but Most likely, I mean, again, I need to see the CV, but generally, if your role is mainly on recruitment, you would actually fall into another occupation called recruitment consultant, which is actually not under Australian Computer Society, but this occupation is also in demand in Australia, right? So remember, we said there are 500 over occupations. One of it is under recruitment consultant, and this is where generally they would likely fall.
Okay. Okay. And can I claim points for work experience that is not related to my nominated occupation?
As long as the work experience is closely related to your nominated occupation, we would be able to still claim the points. Unless you're talking about totally different, then you're not supposed to claim the points. Because when you're claiming points under the Australian point test, it basically means it basically refers to closely related work experience. So for example, you could be, see, sometimes what I often see with IT is someone could be a ICT PM now, ICT project manager, but they would have started off as an ICT business analyst. And someone in IT would definitely know that usually a BA's role, a ICT BA's role and an ICT PM's role is very much closely related. So are they the same nominated occupation? No. But are they closely related? Yes. So we would be able to claim that together.
All right. Okay. Can I still apply if my English is lower than competent level?
Okay. Competent is the minimum to even qualify for general skill migration, not just for IT. Okay. So competent is the basic. So that is actually band 6 in each component of IELTS or 50 in each component of PTE. So if you're not able to meet this course, then please retake. I'm sure you can make it to at least get the competence score.
Yes. Okay, next question. Is there a priority assessment for ICT?
ACS at this point of time, they don't offer priority processing. There are other authorities like VETASAS and Engineers Australia that offers this, but not ACS. I wish they did too, because 3 months is pretty long.
Okay. All right. Currently, I'm having the title of Implementation Engineer with an experience of 2 years, and also having an experience of web development for 1 year. Meantime, my degree in Bachelor in Science is Software Engineering from UK. So how do I fare?
Okay, so software engineering and web developer, that's not directly related, but it's still ICT major. But as an implementation engineer, again, the title doesn't really describe what you exactly do. So we would need to study your CV to see what are the tasks that you undertake under implementation engineer. So you've mentioned this applicant has 2 years in implementation engineering?
Yes.
Yeah, so we would need to review that to see where he fits.
All right.
So again, I can keep telling you, it's not about the title. Not about the title, because title is just what an organization gives you, right? But what Australia looks at is your roles, your task to match it to the occupation. So we don't match occupation by title, we match occupation by nature of the task.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we can go for a last question.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay. How about a past experience as a founder of a tech company? Does it help?
Founder of a tech company. Okay, that's interesting. So next, this is when you say founder of tech, my brain directly goes to global talent. Okay, so let's say you founded a tech company that has been successful. Okay, that is successful. You did a lot of solutions that were cutting edge or innovative. Then potentially you can actually go under GTI, global talent. Okay, that's number one. Under general skill migration, being a founder. So under general skill migration, the difference is, right, they don't measure how great you are. Okay, to put it very plainly, general skill migration doesn't measure how great you are in your task. It's basically, do you do the task? Okay, so you could be a software engineer who just performs software engineering tasks, right? You're a software engineer. At the same time, you could be a software engineer who comes up with a lot of novel stuff, brand new cutting edge stuff, because it will still be the same, because what is the way of gauging here? Years of experience. It's basically by years of experience. Okay, so being a founder, if let's say being a founder, you were more in charge of managing projects, you would be a project manager, right? If being a founder, you also participated in development, then we can put you as a developer, programmer, or software engineer. Okay, so that's the thing. So for general skill migration, don't worry about it. It's really not about how high level or how much of achievements you've done. It's basically if you've done the task, if you have the skills to perform the job, that's general skill migration. But if you are performing the job above and beyond, exceptional, award-winning, that's when you fall into global talent.
All right. Okay. Well, actually, we can go for another question.
Okay.
All right. Would Australia employers still want to hire me if I'm on the 491 visa, which is not a PR?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. That's because, number one, 491 has been designed by Australian government as a priority. Okay. In 2019, when 491 was officially launched, right? It actually was given as a priority visa. Okay. Government likes this. Number two, you have full work rights. Okay. So all the employer needs to know is whether you have full work rights. That's it. So they will not be picky just because you have a 491 or a 189, because 491 still leads to a PR. So no problem. It's still precious.
Okay, that's nice. All right. Okay. How long does it take for the whole process?
Like I said, estimation would be 1.5 years. It's a safe timeline. It could be faster, it could be slightly longer. It all depends on the type of occupation you have, the type of points you have as well. So that's a bit subjective, and we'll need to assess that.
Okay. All right. All right.
Any more?
Okay. Should our degrees be from an Australian university only, or could we have a degree from any other country?
Good question. Good question. I should have covered that earlier. So your qualification can be from any country. Okay. Australian degrees might add additional points to you, but any overseas qualification is acceptable. Okay. But what we need to carefully check is if your overseas qualification is equivalent to a degree or not. So based on that, we will do the assessment whether you fall into the first row, which is a bachelor degree level, or whether it's an associate degree level. So any qualification can migrate to Australia. It doesn't have to be Australian qualification alone.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. So I think that's questions we have.
Do we
All right.
still have questions? Then maybe we might need to revert later if there's
Yeah.
no questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the questions that we did not manage to answer this session, not to worry. Our team will respond to you via email. All right. And yes, Audrey, you would like to say anything?
Sure. Okay, so I think thank you. A lot of people have stayed back till the end. I think that's really nice to see. I really wish this session is able to give you proper insights on how to migrate as an IT professional. Certain questions are really good. Like there might be a misconception that you can only migrate if you had an Australian qualification, but that's not the case. That's not the case at all. Okay, we have so many. Even if you're from Malaysia or you're from India, see, half of the IT migrants from in Australia are from India. So they all have Indian qualifications, right? So international qualifications, overseas qualifications are all accepted. And most importantly, what I want to stress here is the year just started. The year just started. We are in July. Quotas are still very fresh. So if you're keen to start the process, you should start it soon so that you are still in the running for this new quota. Okay, so we are always here to give you the most transparent advice. just reach out to us, send us your CV, and we'll be giving you a free assessment, and if you're eligible, a free consultation as well. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. I look forward to assisting you. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today.
Okay.